So it looks like we're going to be getting a little preview of what is potentially going to be showing up at Walmart Collector Con next week. And it's that of a spiritual successor to these Transformer the Movie retro reissues that have been Walmart exclusives, taking those old G1 molds, giving them the best possible screen accurate paint scheme they could get, and then putting them out there. And I say spiritual successor because while the spirit of what they're trying to do is there is a very new, brand new kind of packaging and branding to this. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about the 40th anniversary Walmart exclusive retro reissue Soundwave and Blaster Generation 1. So these are, man, like this is like some major stuff to talk about in terms of like what's going on here, because there's pricing stuff to talk about. There's mold stuff we got to talk about. So maybe we'll just start from the beginning. We'll start with that Soundwave. We'll just start with the Soundwave. So like when we're talking the tooling and the mold of that old G1 Soundwave, goes all the way back to 82, 83, Takara, Microman, that old Cassette Man mold. That was a Satoshi Koizumi design, and it was one of the few designs he actually got to do with Transformers with Microman. I mean, Yoke-san is always associated mostly with most of those Microman Transformer designs, but Satoshi Kazumi was the one who did Soundwave. And that design, the old Cassette Man, was put out there, saw a lot of success. Hasbro took it and then turned it into Soundwave, did some different tooling on it to make it the Soundwave that we know today, pretty much changing that front piece of the cassette door to have it just not say Cassette Man anymore. That's why if you look at the super early 1984 catalogs of Generation 1, including even Soundwave's instruction manual, you'll see a nice blue piece of tape across his stomach to hide the Cassette Man thing, because they didn't have the final version of Soundwave ready to go yet with the new tooling. But so yeah, that 1984 Soundwave came out, was absolutely successful, sold insanely well. It got reprinted and reprinted over and over and over in 84 and in 85. They needed to sell tons of Soundwaves. That mold was used even more, brought back to Japan. Transformers makes its return, in a sense, to Japan in 1985. They use it like crazy there. They double dip even. They use it for that VSX Grimlock Soundwave 2-pack. Tons of Soundwaves out there. And then they're going to take that mold again. They're going to even use it even more. And in 1987, they use that same tooling, and then they retool it, and then they make it into Sound Blaster. Give it a new chest, new buttons. The buttons are now all one chrome piece with some rounded off edges to kind of change it a little bit. New chest that now is more extended and could fit now 2 cassettes. It was what it was. And those molds were used through the gamut over those years. And then you fast forward to 2001 to 2003, when Hasbro and Takara started doing a whole bunch of reissues of those old G1 tools and those old G1 designs. And Aaron Archer said it himself, those molds were finished. And that's where Takara looked at that Soundwave that they used like nuts. And they're like, we got to make some new tooling to this. So the 2003 to 2005 Takara book box reissues of Soundwave were the original molds, more or less, but definitely made from the ground up in a lot of ways with some new tooling. And that's why we were then introduced to a G1 Soundwave that had that more G1 Sound Blaster unified button chest. And that was kind of the tools that we would see used later on pretty much indefinitely. Every reissue or repaint of Soundwave after that point pretty much had some kind of history from that either 2003 Soundwave with the new buttons that was pretty much based on the Sound Blaster one, or that new Sound Blaster tooling from 2005 based off of the old Sound Blaster from 1987. I hope I'm not losing you guys with this. The point is that those two molds pretty much influenced everything that came afterwards. Even the Linking Part 1, the J Balvatron one, the 2007 reissue of Soundwave, for some reason that used the Sound Blaster mold. There was all kinds of wackiness, but they used it across so many different ones. Shattered glass, everything. And then you jump forward all the way to 2019, and then Walmart does the retro reissue G1 Soundwave that was in stores not too long ago. And they used that old tooling from 2003 G1 Soundwave, that unified button. And that was that. Now we look at what we have here in front of us today, this 40th anniversary one. What's the tooling here? What's going on? There's a lot going on, in all honesty. So it looks like there's some more minor retooling gone here, but it could be just me trying to figure out, how they're getting away with this with different kinds of engineering, and of course when we get into pricing. But at the end of the day, the button on his stomach looks like the Sound Blaster one that's unified, but they painted in between the spots to make it look like it's individual battery buttons like the original. It looks interesting the way that they decided to tackle this. I guess because they feel it also kind of makes it look a little more show accurate, because the show accurate one had a more softer, rounder kind of button design for the animation model. As for the coloring does exactly what the Transformers the movie retro reissues from Walmart do. Take those old G1 molds, try to make them look as screen accurate as possible. I like the painting. I think it's a really good attempt at making it look like the animation model from '84. Maybe the blue is a little off for me, but it might be just the lighting. I almost feel like even the original toy might have got the blue a little more closer than what they're trying to do here. But at the end of the day, I still think it's a really good attempt. So that's really nice too. Aside from that, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. The first time we've had a G1 molded 84 Soundwave, fine, we have the proper red visor as opposed to the yellow one that he's had forever, because that's how the toy was. Also comes with Laserbeak and Ravage. Historically, G1 Soundwaves came with Buzzsaw, but they're going to go with something that's more screen recognized, I guess is the best way to put it, where Buzzsaw had very limited appearances, but Laserbeak and Ravage are staples of the Soundwave army, if anything. So, and they went through the same treatment, little paint things here and there to make them more screen accurate. So that's a nice touch too. But I think it looks really good. But at the end of the day, we're going to also talk about pricing and what's going on here. And some things might have been removed in the process. Let's get into Blaster, though, before we get into the pricing. Now, Blaster is kind of the same story, has that entire history from Takara going into Hasbro and then back to Takara again. But the big thing is that he really, at the end of the day, after he had kind of that final tooling in 1985, he had obviously his Microman one, had the radio stuff in it. Then there was an early version by Hasbro, which had the battery pack piece, which was hard to remove. And then we had the final version in late 85 that everyone is familiar with. Even if you bought one back in the day, it was probably that version. And that was the same tooling indefinitely going forward from 1985. So Blaster didn't really have much changes to his mold. And it's kind of the same thing that we have here today. But before we get to what we're talking about here today, back in 2020, Hasbro did a fan vote asking who should be the next reissue for 2021, and it was between Blaster and Skywarp. Blaster won that voting by 56% of the vote, and in 2021, Blaster was our new reissue and was literally on the shelves just a short 2 years ago in that G1 retro reissue packaging. Really like his old toy. And he didn't sell very well, but we'll get into that in a moment. So now 2 years later, we have that Blaster again, but now he comes with a cassette, which the original toy didn't do. And his coloring looks great. I think it's probably the best that mold has ever looked, in my opinion. They really matched all the colors of the original animation model, even the little fine details on his legs and everything. They changed the black plastic to match a more lighter gray. I love how they match the face sculpt properly with the coloring. And something I forgot to mention too, both the box art covers for both of them have brand new kind of modified Generation 1 box art. It looks like it's the old G1 box art, but it actually was modified to match how they looked in the show with the coloring of the eyes and the little fine details. I'll do a little side-by-side to show you guys there. So that's a nice extra touch too. And Blaster looks great. Maybe it's my bias because he was the first Transformer I ever owned, but I think he looks fantastic, looks really screen accurate. But what about price? That's a whole other thing that's going to probably make me not favor it so much for most of you. But he comes with Steeljaw. Pretty cool. What I appreciate about the Steeljaw that's really cool is that it looks like they painted both sides of his cassette, because the original Steeljaw toy just had stickers on one side, so all the detail was on that one side. And this one here, there's detail on both sides. They make it look way more animation accurate. And an extra add to the animation accurate is the original Steeljaw came with silver accessories. There was a rare variant back in the day where he also came with gold accessories for his weapons, which it was also more in demand because it was more screen accurate. This one comes with the more screen accurate gold accessories, so that's an extra nice touch too. Looks really good. And what I also like is if you don't have Steeljaw in Blaster's chest, they actually have painted detail inside Blaster's chest that make it look really nice even if you don't have a cassette in there. So that's a nice extra bonus too. But let's cover the elephant in the room and let's talk about price now. This is where it's like, ooh, this might be a little tough for some people. So these are going to retail at Walmart for $44.97. So let's say $45. This is going to be $45 for each one of these. The interesting thing about this was the original retro reissue Soundwave that we got from Walmart not too long ago was $50. And Blaster was $30. So already there's a bit of an up and down there. It's kind of like they tried to find a middle. So now Soundwave is cheaper than what he was before. And he comes with an extra cassette. Granted, he doesn't come with Buzzsaw anymore. Now he comes with Laserbeak and Ravage. But now he's actually $5 cheaper than what he was before. And you get technically more. While Blaster is actually more expensive. Now, granted, you actually get a cassette this time because you didn't have one before. But he's more expensive now. So how does Soundwave get away with that? Well, here's the thing. I think this Soundwave, on top of the tooling and everything, I think they removed all the die cast from it in order to pull this off, in order to balance that cost. So I don't think there's going to be die cast in that Soundwave, or maybe even the Laserbeak and the Ravage, which also have die cast in certain areas. I think it's just going to be straight up plastic, just hopefully a much stronger plastic. And you're just going to have that crazy paint on it for $45, which then doesn't sound too bad when you really think about it. But now we talk about the Blaster. The Blaster is now more expensive than what it was before. It was originally $30, now it's going to be $45. And all you're pretty much paying for is a premium paint scheme and an extra little cassette bot that didn't come with them before. Now, why is this a problem? Well, let's talk about the history of these guys just in recent when it comes to the retail market. When Soundwave came out, the original retro reissue Soundwave just a few years ago, it was original MSRP $50. It went on clearance because it wasn't selling very well at $50 down to $30. And it kind of found its market at $30, but it did have to go on clearance in order to find its audience of people that were willing to buy it. So now it's $45. Maybe people will be interested in this Soundwave. It's a deep for the two little cassette bots, the paint scheme. You know, it won't have the die cast, but maybe it'll find its market at $45, and it's the 40th anniversary, so people might get on that bandwagon. It's Soundwave. He'll do well. But Blaster, this is where I'm worried. Blaster's going to be an extra $15 from his original $30, and yes, he comes with the extra cassette and the premium paint. But Blaster has a sad tale with his original retro reissue just in 2021, barely 2 years ago. He was retailing for $30. And he sold so poorly at $30 that he was going in deep discount in Walmart as low as $15, sometimes $5. And we were seeing listings even as low as $2. That's how low it went. They had too many of them. They were trying to get rid of them. So now you're trying to tell me this same mold that we got barely 2 years ago, now with a premium paint scheme and an extra cassette, at $15 more than where it couldn't even find a market at $30 is going to do well? I don't know. I think Blaster is going to have a very tough retail life cycle next year for this 40th anniversary Walmart one. And don't get me wrong, he's one of my favorite characters, my first Transformer I ever owned, but it's going to be a tough one. I think that's going to be a very tough sale. I'm probably going to still want to get it. Nice 40th anniversary box, a celebration of the first Transformer I ever got. Sure, why not? But I don't know about the rest of the world wanting to pay $45 when most people didn't even want to pay $30. So that's going to be a rough one. Let me know what you think about that. That's going to be a real rough one though. So all of this, we're probably talking about it a little early, but all this is going to be happening next week. The Walmart Collector Con, reminder when that is, Friday, October 13th, next week. Probably some other reveals too are going to happen with that. It's also going to be the same weekend as New York Comic Con, so might even get some more on top of that too. So it's going to be exciting next week, but let me know what you think about all of this. We actually have other Transformer stuff to talk about. There's a lot of pre-orders that are dropping today too from the Takara side of things, but we'll save that for later. Let me know what you think, guys, and hopefully this will all work out for the best.